Phew. Has it felt like someone just flipped a switch and suddenly summer's here?
Oh, definitely.
I was getting that, wow, what a week
Mm,
vibe with the heat, you know? Almost exactly like how our sources put it, especially mentioning hitting like 40 degrees Celsius.
absolutely.
Are
Sweltering.
you feeling that intensity too?
Damn, yeah. It's certainly been noticeable, and
Mhm.
it really underscores why we're doing this deep dive today, doesn't it?
Totally.
Into the rising temperatures, pulling from those podcast excerpts.
Right. And this isn't just, complaining about a sticky commute or something.
No, no.
Our mission today is to really try and get under the skin of why these summers feel so much hotter year after year.
Mm,
What are the real world consequences beyond just feeling uncomfortable? And importantly, what can we actually do about it?
exactly.
We're not just here for a heat wave weather report, are we?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, what the sources made really clear is that this isn't trivial.
Right.
We're looking at actual, tangible impacts
Mm.
on our health, our well-being,
Yeah.
the very infrastructure our cities rely on. Even something as basic as our food supply.
Wow.
So this is information that has a direct bearing on you listening right now.
Exactly. And if you've been feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed by just how intense the heat has been recently,
Which is understandable.
think of this as your kind of shortcut to clarity. We're going to unpack what's happening and why quickly, effectively.
Let's do it.
So let's dive in. What's the big picture, the fundamental shift we need to grasp?
Okay, well, the foundation really lies in a number that sounds quite small initially.
Okay.
The average global temperature. It's risen by about 1.1 degrees Celsius since the late 1800s.
1.1 degrees. Doesn't sound like a huge amount.
It doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But, as the source material really highlights, that seemingly minor increase, it's like turning up the global thermostat just enough
Mm-hmm.
to bake our summers that much more intensely.
Yeah.
It makes them noticeably hotter and, crucially, more dangerous.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. So it's not just a random hot summer here or there.
Yeah.
The podcast we looked at, it really emphasized this shift away from occasional heat waves towards what they called a new normal.
That's the key phrase, a new normal.
Yeah. And it's almost jarring to think about places like India, parts of Southern Europe, even areas in the U.S. consistently hitting those extreme temperatures, mid to high 40s Celsius.
45, 50 degrees.
That used to feel like something happening, a world away.
Exactly. And then, when you concentrate large populations in cities, well, this already significant heat gets amplified
Amplified. How?
by something called the urban heat island effect.
Okay, urban heat island. Let's unpack that. What exactly is going on in our cities that makes them these heat traps?
Well, think of it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Cities basically become heat sponges.
Okay.
All the concrete, the steel, the glass in buildings, the huge stretches of asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
These materials absorb and hold on to way more solar energy than, say, natural landscapes like forests or fields.
Right, that makes sense.
So if you're living in a built-up area, chances are you're experiencing temperatures several degrees higher than someone just a few miles outside the city limits.
Several degrees.
Yeah. It creates these localized pockets of really intense heat. Dark asphalt, for instance, it just soaks up sunlight all day.
Like a radiator.
Exactly. And then releases it slowly, all through the night. Unlike, a green field, which reflects more energy and cools down faster through evaporation.
That paints a really clear picture, especially when you think about just walking down a city street on a really scorching day.
You feel it radiating off the pavement.
Definitely. And the podcast also made a really crucial point. This amplified heat, it doesn't hit everyone equally, does it?
Absolutely not. That's a key point the source material makes. There's a significant inequity here.
How so?
Low-income neighborhoods often bear the brunt of this urban heating.
Okay.
These areas typically have less green space, fewer parks, fewer trees to provide that natural cooling effect. And the housing itself often has poorer insulation, making the people living there far more vulnerable to the dangers of extreme heat.
And it's not just about the daytime highs, is it? The podcast flags something really critical about nighttime temperatures, too.
That's right. And this is really serious. The lack of nighttime relief.
Why is that so bad?
Well, warmer nights mean our bodies just don't get that crucial chance to recover from the heat stress built up during the day.
Okay. You need that cool down period.
You do. And this sustained stress on our systems, it can lead to a whole cascade of negative health outcomes. Sleep problems, exhaustion,
Right.
and even more severe conditions like heat stroke.
That's genuinely worrying when you think about it that way. And the podcast really highlighted who is most at risk when those nighttime temperatures stay stubbornly high.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
The elderly, very young children, and also individuals whose work keeps them outdoors.
Construction workers, farm workers.
Precisely. They're particularly vulnerable when nighttime temperatures don't drop sufficiently.
Mm.
The source even shared a really stark statistic in some regions. This silent killer, extreme heat, it actually causes more deaths
More deaths.
than high-profile events like hurricanes or floods.
Wow. That puts it in perspective.
It's a risk that often flies under the radar, I think, but it has a profound impact.
So, okay, we're experiencing hotter summers overall. Our cities are making that heat even worse, especially for some communities. And we're not even getting a break when the sun goes down. What's the fundamental engine? What's driving all of this?
The primary driver, and the podcast was very clear on this, is the increasing concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere,
Okay.
particularly carbon dioxide, CO2, and methane.
And where are they coming from?
The overwhelming majority, from burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, mostly over the past century or so.
Okay, so it's basically that blanket effect we hear about. These gases are trapping more of the sun's heat,
That's the mechanism.
preventing it from radiating back out into space.
Exactly. It's disrupting the Earth's natural climate balance.
Yeah.
And the podcast did a good job, I thought, of linking this big global issue to the things we actually experience in our daily lives. Makes it more tangible.
Right. How so?
Well, you might be seeing the effects directly in, say, higher energy bills because you're running the air conditioning more often.
Right, guilty is charged.
Or maybe noticing changes in growing seasons. Or the yields of local crops if you garden or follow agriculture. Or even just feeling that really oppressive, draining heat in the afternoons that seems to linger longer.
Yeah, that afternoon slog feels worse.
These are all tangible ways this global thing shows up on a very personal level.
And these rising temperatures, they don't happen in isolation, do they? The podcast mentioned these sort of interconnected ripple effects.
That's a great way to put it. Ripple effects. Rising temperatures trigger a whole chain reaction of consequences.
Like what?
Well, the increased need for cooling puts a huge strain on our power grids.
Leading to potential blackouts.
Higher electricity consumption, definitely. And yes, the potential for disruptive power outages, especially during peak heat.
Okay.
We're also seeing more frequent and severe droughts in many places, which means water scarcity becomes a bigger issue.
Right. Water restrictions and things.
Exactly. And, unfortunately, those drier conditions also create a much greater risk of devastating wildfires.
It's all connected.
Like a complex web of interconnected impacts, absolutely.
It can feel a bit overwhelming hearing all that laid out.
You can, yes.
So let's pivot to what can be done. The podcast did talk about solutions, right? Both things maybe we can do as individuals and the bigger systemic changes needed.
Yes, absolutely. It wasn't all doom and gloom.
Good. So what were some key takeaways there?
Well, on an individual level, the source material highlighted practical steps. Things like being more mindful of our energy use.
Okay. Turning things off.
Yeah, simple things. Planting trees around homes or in communities to provide that crucial shade.
Shade helps a lot.
It really does. And choosing public transport or cycling over driving when it's feasible, these are accessible actions.
Things people can actually do.
Right. And when taken collectively, they can contribute to a larger shift. But the podcast also really emphasized that these individual efforts, while important, need to be coupled with significant structural changes.
Okay, like what kind of structural changes?
Well, a fundamental shift towards renewable energy sources, solar, wind, etc., is absolutely critical to cut those greenhouse gas emissions drastically.
Makes sense.
We also need to prioritize designing and, well, rebuilding our cities with heat resilience actually baked into the plan.
How do you do that?
Through things like innovative building materials, maybe updated construction codes that account for higher temperatures.
Okay.
And investing in sustainable, climate-friendly agriculture is also essential for food security, for environmental health.
And it sounds like government policies have a pretty big role to play in making those larger changes happen.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Policies that actively support developing green infrastructure, like parks and green roofs. Policies that integrate comprehensive climate education into schools, perhaps.
Yeah.
And ensuring communities have robust emergency preparedness plans specifically for extreme heat events. These are all vital pieces of a comprehensive response.
The podcast also shared some really encouraging practical examples of solutions that are actually working already.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's inspiring about some of these is that even relatively simple ideas can yield really significant results. Like the example of cities strategically painting rooftops white
Just white paint.
or using other reflective materials. It sounds simple, but it can significantly lower indoor temperatures.
Less AC needed then.
Exactly. It's a straightforward, often low-tech approach with real, demonstrable benefits for energy use and indoor comfort.
That's cool. And what about those green roofs you mentioned, buildings with plants on top? They look nice, but do they do more?
Oh, much more. They're not just aesthetic additions. Green roofs offer a whole bunch of benefits. They significantly help cool urban areas through shade and evapotranspiration, that's moisture release.
Right, like natural air conditioning.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And they can also play a crucial role in managing stormwater runoff, reducing local flooding risk,
Didn't think of that.
and even help improve air quality a bit. Multiple wins.
It's really encouraging to hear about those tangible examples of progress. The podcast seemed to strike a good balance, I thought, acknowledging how serious this
I
is,
think it is.
but also maintaining a sense of maybe realistic optimism about our ability to respond.
That's a critical balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
While the scale of the challenge is huge, undeniable, the source material definitely conveys a sense that we do possess the ingenuity and the capacity to adapt and mitigate these effects if we act decisively and, importantly, collectively. It needs that joined-up effort.
So, bringing this back to you listening right now, the podcast offered a few very practical, actionable suggestions, things you could consider trying. What were some of those?
Yeah, they had a few nice, manageable actions. One was simple. Try using a fan instead of immediately switching on the air conditioning, maybe just for part of the day. See how it goes.
Okay, give the fan a chance.
Another was the simple act of planting something, even if it's just a small potted plant on a balcony. It contributes to local cooling, biodiversity.
Every little bit helps.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, they encouraged sharing information, having conversations about rising temperatures. Implicitly, sharing some of the insights you've gained from our discussion today.
Right, talking about it makes it real. And while we don't have traditional show notes like they might have mentioned,
For a blue clickable link here.
we absolutely encourage you to seek out more info, maybe look up heat safety guidelines for your specific area,
Good idea.
or explore some of the innovative technologies and strategies being developed to tackle extreme heat in cities or agriculture. That desire for deeper understanding is exactly what we hope to spark.
And this all leads, I think, to a really important point for you to reflect on. The intensity of the summer heat we're feeling now. It's undeniable. But as the source material suggests, our awareness of the problem and our collective potential to actually create meaningful change, that's growing too.
So there's the challenge, but also the potential.
Exactly.
So stay informed, stay curious, and let's really think about what all of this means for the future we're building together.